The Taurus New Moon occurs annually in the time of the year that's the midway point between the spring or vernal equinox and the summer solstice. A time when we're called to honor the sanctity of life and the sacredness of life of the Earth, our home planet. Taurus season brings Earth Day in April, followed by Mother's Day in early May. Taurus is fixed Earth energy, its season coinciding with the heart of spring, when the ground thaws after a long winter and life begins to blossom again. Where I live in the northeastern United States, we tend to hold off on starting our gardens until around Mother's Day, allowing the weather, the very bipolar weather here in the Northeast, to stabilize a bit. Unless you're planting something like lettuce, which loves cold nights, then you can plant that early. That's a nugget of wisdom from my Taurus moon father. More to come. It's a time to slow down and ask ourselves, how are we connecting with and living with the Earth? How are we connecting with and grounding down through our 5 senses? How are we living with the Earth and connecting with nature? Have groceries gotten so expensive to essentially force you into the hobby of having a home garden? When was the last time you took a walk barefoot in nature? Whether that was the grass in your backyard, if you're lucky enough to have one, or the sand on a beach. And how are you embodying Earth energy right now? Are we grounding down through cooking food with ingredients that are from the Earth? Whole foods? Or is it a highly processed diet containing long lists of ingredients we can't even pronounce? The sun and moon aligned in Taurus indicates that this is a new beginning, grounded in patience, presence, and rooted in commitment and consistency that'll pay off in the long run. Ripple effects we'll see for years to come. The moon is said to be exalted in the sign of Taurus because the moon is at its best here. Taurus's stability strengthens and sturdies the highly changeable nature of the moon. The highly changeable influence of this incredibly fertile and naturally nurturing moon placement. Moon in Taurus craves security and stability, implying that there could be a lack of it with some sort of large-scale financial crisis. Moon affects the public, and Jupiter is there expanding the energy for all to feel. I mentioned earlier my dad has his moon in Taurus, and it's beautiful energy. It's where the moon is exalted, whether the person identifies as masculine or feminine. It usually bestows an ability to work with ingredients of the earth and of nature to combine them into some beautiful and delicious sensual cooking. So the moon is steadied and grounded in the sign of Taurus. And if I could best describe the energy, especially in comparison or in partnership with my own Gemini moon, he is like a rock to these Gemini and Aquarius energies that are really adaptable and or prone to and or like change. But if you ask this man for emotional advice, he will look you in the face and point blank tell you to just not think about it. And I think it really is that peaceful for him. Unfortunately, if you have a Mercury-ruled moon like myself, you are prone to overthink. And this is not something one easily turns off. Also, they're expanding the energy there. Jupiter in Taurus is practical, grounded, patient, generous, and pragmatic. Jupiter is the planet of abundance, wisdom, and expansion. And it's prominent under this new moon, not only because it's in loose conjunction to the new moon, but because it coincides, the new moon coincides with the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction. Jupiter will be increasingly important over the next few weeks as it prepares for the optimistic and joyful Sagittarius full moon on May 23rd. And finally, Jupiter's ingress, or 12-month sojourn, through the constellation Gemini, the twins, Castor and Pollux, until June 2025. That means any of you with Gemini placements like myself, you'll get a nice benefic boost, even though Jupiter is technically debilitated in Gemini. Watch out for things like too many irons in the fire, and if you're like myself, who also has her Mars in Gemini, this is something I definitely have to consciously practice, especially with Mars at the 13th degree of Gemini, karmic degree. It is a pattern of cardinal energy is really good at starting things. That's the Libra, that's the Aries. Fixed signs are really good at seeing things through to completion. Mutable signs are highly adaptable. Mutable air sign, air fuels fire. Mars brings fire in conjunction with the moon, kind of like an Aries moon with a big boost of Gemini. Any of your Gemini placements will be expanded by the presence of Jupiter. So any of those habits, for me, Gemini has a lot of interest. It's like a jack of all trades, but master of none. It's very good at a lot of things, and that is a good problem to have, because at the end of the day, if you have to start at ground zero, you have options. You have many skills and many talents to pick yourself up and work with, especially your people skills, your communication skills, and your ability to learn and adapt quickly. However, when Jupiter is there, watch for that tendency to start things but not finish them, or say yes, thinking that you can juggle multiple things, and because you want to and you're genuinely interested in multiple things, but realistically there is only so much time in a day. So watch for the tendency to spread oneself really thin and leading to burnout or biting off more than you can chew. The sun co-present with the moon in Taurus highlights stability, patience, and determination. Sun in Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign. Fixed or set. It's the sign that's the most resistant to change. And that's because change threatens the very peace and stability Taurus works so hard to secure. The element Earth bestows profound respect and appreciation for the planet Earth and nature. People with prominent Taurus placements tend to be very naturalistically intelligent. They have a lot of natural survival skills, and they can cook, or they have an interest in things like foraging, combining ingredients from the earth and their love of nature all into creative little hobbies. It's very Taurus. Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus, bestowing exceptional creative, artistic, and/or musical creative energy, a love and appreciation of beauty and art, along with fine food and drink. But also, anything Venus ruled needs to watch for a tendency to overindulge, especially in luxuries and the finer things. Watch for materialism when Taurus is in shadow. The glyph Taurus is symbolized by a circle and a semicircle. It's a bowl representing its strong, determined nature. The circle representing willpower, and the cup representing material wealth. The two go hand in hand. One must have willpower to attain material wealth. Everything in life begins from laying a solid foundation. The sun and moon are aligned 18 degrees 2 minutes Taurus, which falls within the second decan of Taurus, the area of Taurus that's ruled by planetary ruler Venus and sub-ruled by planet Mercury, presenting a more Virgo flavor to its energy. This is about seeking justice and bestows strong speaking and writing ability, and it connects us to the deeply healing conjunction occurring between Mercury and Chiron in the late degrees of Aries, which we'll explore later on. The sun and moon aligned 18 degrees Taurus rounds up to 19 degrees in the Sabian Symbols, a newly formed continent representing originality and fresh opportunities. At its highest, this degree represents creative and sweeping vision with a potential to transform the world. Expect and work for the best to get the best, while at the same time avoid biting off more than you can realistically chew or digest and accomplish. The sun and moon align 18 degrees Taurus. They form part of a 5-planet stellium in the sign of Taurus, creating a huge emphasis of energy there, highlighting Taurus themes. We have Venus, the ruling planet for the Taurus New Moon. My outfit is very Venus inspired. I'm wearing green, a color I associate with Earth and with Taurus energy. Obviously I have to match my gold with my gold. I've got the leaf though. I usually wear this headband in the fall because it makes me think more of autumn and the falling leaves. But it's got a very Venusian flavor to it. So I even put some intention into my outfit with Venus in mind. I'm a Libra, Sun, Rising, Venus, and Mercury. Mega Libra stellium with planetary ruler there. I know Venus well. When Venus is in one of her signs of rulership, she's really happy. She's free to express her energy there. Venus in rulership is empowered, and that's affecting and influencing anything in the Venus-ruled signs, Taurus and Libra. So this 5-planet stellium and the south node in Libra. Venus in Libra in rulership is activating the benefits of the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Uranus, all also in the sign of Taurus. Venus has an opportunity to slow down in her home sign of Taurus, especially after a bit of an impatient, fiery, passionate, but kind of impulsive and rushed stint through Aries. Venus in Taurus can be very focused on things like the earth, environmental activism, getting outside, starting a fitness routine that involves some sort of walking, getting in touch with nature. This is usually the time of the year where I have the most flexibility in my schedule to go foraging, and I guess I have the most knowledge of things that can be harvested in May and where to find them in the state of Pennsylvania. But the rest of the year I tend to have like a lot of traveling and other things that I'm Gemini juggling. But this is the time I can really honor it for Taurus season. We're also focused on our material assets and resources. Taurus and Venus rule our movable assets, like money. The Sun, which represents the energy we're currently called to embody, is creating a spotlight of energy in Taurus. The Moon, representing who we already are, and in a chart of the new moon or a full moon, the public, Uranus, the planet of sudden change, innovation, and revolution, influencing Pluto, while Pluto's in Aquarius, and finally Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, luck, abundance, and expansion, further expanding that Taurus energy. Jupiter is still conjunct Uranus, with a 3-degree orb. An orb is like a standard deviation, if you were able to survive statistics class. We're still amid a very powerful, once per every 14-year Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which peaked between April 18th and April 26th, exacting twice, first at the 21st degree and then at the 22nd degree, with ripple effects lasting into May. We've been feeling the energy build since the planets came within a 5-degree orb, 5-degree standard deviation, from one another back on March 20th, around the vernal equinox. This brought a culmination to the prior Jupiter-Uranus cycle, and when Jupiter and Uranus conjoined a second time, first at the 21st degree, then the 22nd degree, the first time on April 20th and April 21st, the second time April 25th and April 26th, signifying a radical shift into new paradigms, or new ways of thinking and being, and how we attract them, Jupiter and Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus shows us the way. Do you remember the 5 rules of Jupiter in Taurus I had put out at the beginning of the Jupiter in Taurus 1-year transit? Be patient, pragmatic, practical, present, and confident. This is ultimately helping us shift out of lack mentality, out of any limiting beliefs, or any limiting ways of thinking. Jupiter, especially with regards to our finances or our relationships. Is there perhaps an opportunity where we could show more gratitude, and in so doing, attract more abundance? When Jupiter is in Taurus, growth, wisdom, and abundance are attracted, not chased. This is like a magnet for money. When this is in someone's natal chart, it indicates the capacity to build or establish profound wealth, not only for the self, but for the next generation. It also usually bestows significant talents in and a profound love for nature, whether that be through something like archery or foraging. Jupiter expands the energy of whatever sign it's traveling through. So this is expanding the Taurus energy and influence. Specifically, this 3rd decan of Taurus, where Uranus and Jupiter both currently reside, is subruled by Saturn, which has more of a Capricorn subflavor to its energy. Remember that first decan, that first 10 degrees, is purely Taurian under the influence of Venus. Then we add a secondary planetary ruler for the 2nd decan from 10 degrees to 19 degrees, and that would be Venus sub Mercury, giving a Virgo subflavor to the Taurus energy. And then finally that last final decan from 20 degrees to 29 degrees, where both Uranus and Jupiter currently are, both moving a little bit slowly, so they'll be there for some time for you to, by the time you see this video, to get used to the energy. Subruled by Saturn, planet of karma and restriction, and associating more of a Capricorn energy or subflavor. This decan specifically is associated with the constellation Perseus, and Jupiter is approaching conjunction with fixed star Algol, 26 degrees Taurus, the Gorgon's head, aka Medusa, who Perseus so famously slayed. if you're a Greek mythology nerd like myself. We have the Sun co-present in Taurus, and once Venus entered the sign of Taurus as well, in loose operative conjunction to the new moon, might I add, kicked this all up a notch. The benefits of the Jupiter Uranus conjunction. So yes, perhaps around that initial conjunction point, something very abrupt or sudden happened. We were thrown a big curveball. But ultimately, remember, Uranus isn't a bad guy. Uranus is the higher self, it's the higher mind. Those curveballs are intended to break you free from the shackles of complacency. It ultimately wants you to learn that change is the only constant. We ultimately don't have a tremendous amount of control other than how we react to the circumstances we're given. So we're reminded to be ever fluid and adapt to these changing circumstances. And that great strength can come in our ability to do so. So that sub-rulership of Saturn and the long-term sextiles Jupiter and Uranus are forming between Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, well, this is indicating that after the fallout of some sudden change that ultimately wants to break us free from the shackles of complacency, we are able to plant seeds of intention under the Taurus moon, laying the foundation for a more sustainable and benefic, with the energies we're seeing now with the second Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, future. Something much more sustainable for the long run. Something that fits our Pluto and Aquarius future, not our Pluto and Capricorn past. Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter in Taurus, especially sextile one another, indicating that they're working together. This indicates rewards and huge payoff. Uranus and Taurus can bring sudden gains or losses. This long-term sextile could indicate sudden gains, rewards coming in for consistent effort placed over time, for embodying the positive aspects of both Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Taurus. Make a dream a reality. Daily, small, consistent habits that make it real. You just do it. Uranus in Taurus brings innovation and change to Taurus things like money, banking, agriculture, cattle, our dependence on cattle as a food source, food in general, vegetables, anything grown of the earth, water, any of our resources, especially natural resources, and our control over them. Uranus seeks to guide us back into our individual power by understanding the natural and spiritual laws that govern us. We realize that we only get out of life what we're willing to put into it. We learn to adapt to change, and we find fresh ways to reestablish and reinvent ourselves with every obstacle or curveball. Once we learn to trust that that change is often for the better. Uranus was last in Taurus from 1934 to 1941, during the Great Depression, the time of the Great Dust Bowl, when money came, or around this time rather went, rather unexpectedly. This was a time period marked by sudden losses. Whenever the two align in the sign of Taurus, money can come from an unusual source or an unorthodox career, such as an astrologer on YouTube. The wealth really started to climb after 1941, when the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction of 1941 led to the passing of the Lend and Lease Bill, supplying arms and munitions to the Allied powers, which, although they were able to maintain their neutrality, the United States, we were able to maintain our neutrality, this is not how the Axis powers viewed it from their perspective. This would ultimately spur the Axis powers, namely Japan, to attack Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, essentially forcing America's hand and formal involvement in World War II. Keep in mind also that Uranus in Taurus is the planetary ruler for Pluto, while Pluto is in Aquarius. This has deep ties to environmentalism, humanitarianism, technological advances, advances in aviation, trains, and aerospace, and social concerns. Pluto has one final stop, or blow, through the critical 29th anaretic degree of Capricorn, both retrograde and direct, from September 2nd to November 20th, 2024, coinciding with the 2024 United States presidential election. Pluto in Capricorn, especially at this critical 29th degree, is destroying abuses of power and corruption, especially by top-down structures or systems of organization, such as the government, corporations, or anyone who's in a position of power that misuses it. Really, anyone, Shadow Capricorn, who manipulates other people for selfish or personal gain. Uranus and Jupiter and the stellium of planets in Taurus help us rebuild a more sustainable future from the ashes of Pluto and Capricorn. Let's take a a deeper look at ruling planet Venus. Venus is in a loose operative conjunction to both the Sun and Moon, which are in conjunction 18 degrees, beginning with this Taurus New Moon. Venus is within an 8-degree orb of the Sun and Moon. In fact, the Sun and Venus will travel together through the signs of Gemini and Cancer, carrying us into the beginning of Leo season, when the two will finally begin to separate out of conjunction. This means that Venus will be hidden from view for the next 3 months, during what's known as a superior conjunction to the Sun. A superior conjunction occurs when Venus circles around the backside of the Sun from our earthbound perspective. Venus follows 18-month cycles, spending approximately 9 months as an evening star and approximately 9 months as a morning star. For the past 9 months, Venus has been presenting as a morning star, at least from my perspective here in the Northern Hemisphere, due to its close proximity to the Sun. Venus will not be visible from our perspective here on Earth. Venus will re-emerge after the second back-to-back Capricorn full moon. Yes, we have 2 in a row this year, so mark your calendar. One the day after the summer solstice, so the first day of Cancer season, and one on the very last day of Cancer season at 29 degrees. 1 degrees and 29 degrees, respectively. After that Capricorn 29-degree full moon on July 22nd, Venus will emerge as an evening star for the next 9 months. Symbolically, while Venus and the Sun are in close conjunction, within a 0 or 2-degree orb, so exactly on top of one another or extremely close, sometimes this can have a negative effect. The Sun is combust, that planet. It's so close to it, it burns it out. So this implies that over the next 3 months, our finances may feel a bit burnout by the needs of the ego, the needs of essentially just living. That can be our relationships, it can be our finances. Venus rules many things, among them our peace and our resources. This means that beginning with the Taurus New Moon, and as Venus comes into a tighter conjunction with the Sun over the next few weeks, and they travel together, while Venus communes with the stars, we too will undergo a period of reflection and introspection around Venus themes. This could include the work that we do, our money, any debts that we may owe, our overall stability and security. We'll be reflecting on our values, our relationship with self and how that extends to relationship with others, the work that we do to earn money, how we can come from a place of greater love and peace, and how can we practice more gratitude to attract greater abundance by first appreciating what we already have. While Venus is reflecting, she's influencing everything placed in the Venus-ruled signs of Taurus and Libra. Presently, that's the new moon, Jupiter Uranus conjunction, and the South Node in Libra. That South Node in Libra is all about taking personal accountability, living a life aligned with higher purpose or the higher self, and in the vision of a higher power, acting in ways that contribute and do not harm people or the land or its inhabitants. Hustle culture is dead, and Pluto's final days through 29 degrees Capricorn is here to show you that power and abuse of power, as we operate out of greed or lust for control, has led us into darkness and conflict, where people are exploited over their access to resources. This comes from generations and life cycles of trauma, coming from a lack mentality, craving the perception of what you don't have. And it leads to destruction, creating more trauma, which can perpetuate through generations, something I refer to in my practice as generational karma. When there's too much emphasis on Venusian or Taurian energy, sensuality, security, stability, and relationships, this can lead to materialism and complacency, stagnation, and laziness when in shadow. The end does not justify the means, especially if the means involves manipulation, deceit, or exploiting others for selfish gain. Shadow Capricorn. The means may in fact gain you negative karma if you aren't careful and living with intention through consciousness. Pay special care to your sensory organs, eyes, ears, nose, throat, mouth, which can be flared up around this time by seasonal allergies. Look out for injuries and illnesses affecting the throat, neck, and or thyroid gland, areas that Taurus rules and influences. An overemphasis of Taurus energy, or Taurus in shadow, can be a glutton or a miser, a hoarder squandering what comes their way, a taker becoming acquisitive, materialistic, or greedy, instead of learning that life is about giving to get. Generosity without expectation of anything in return is the key to attracting wealth when Jupiter is in Taurus. The new moon is featured in a grand Earth trine between the 5-planet stellium in Taurus Ceres, asteroid of nurturing and tied to planet Earth, 21 degrees Capricorn, and Black Moon Lilith, 24 degrees Virgo, co-present with Juno, asteroid of long-term commitments. A grand Earth trine indicates that the energy is harmonious and free-flowing as it's in the same element, Earth. The grand Earth trine is part of a larger chart pattern known as a Kite formation, featuring an opposition between Black Moon Lilith, which is the dark or shadow side of the moon or feminine, pitted against Neptune and Pisces, both Saturn and Neptune, because Saturn is getting closer and closer to Neptune, and that would be in opposition to Black Moon Lilith in Virgo. So there is a pattern there of disempowerment, and that will be related to something with shadow feminine, so perhaps a timeline where you feel like you have to manipulate maybe masculine energy to advance your survival. We're shedding layers of that. We're shedding any codependency or people-pleasing as we lean into greater authenticity and learn to trust. We're shedding layers of victim consciousness. We're exiting karmic cycles that pit us in the position of the victim. We can fall patterns into negative things happening, but the dangerous territory is when you start to take that personally or start to adopt a woe is me mentality, which can have the effect of manifesting more negativity because that is what you're focusing your energy on. So I know it can be really challenging, especially in American society. I feel like a lot of people, whether they have medical or student debt, credit card debt, or they have car loans through the roof because they've fallen into the trap of leasing and now inflation rates are really high. We've all, to some degree, come to accept a certain level of debt as just part of life. And that's a really sad state for the economy to be in. So back to that opposition between Black Moon Lilith and Saturn/Neptune, we may be overcoming patterns of a tendency to escape or avoid, especially deeper or darker, more troubling emotions. The Grand Earth Trine is essentially about healing the darker patterns of disempowerment in a way that we can become conscious of it and perhaps break the habit or break the chain and prevent similar occurrences from happening in the future. This is what it means to reflect and evolve and to have human consciousness, the ability to reflect on one's thoughts and actions and choose differently if presented a set of similar circumstances in the future, to have the ability to choose differently, to reflect, to evolve, and grow. Is both a blessing and a curse. The Moon and Mercury are the two most aspected planets in the chart of the Taurus New Moon. It's important to note that Mars in Aries, Neptune in Pisces, and Venus in Taurus are all in their signs of rulership. The North Node conjunct Chiron and Mercury calls us to heal both emotionally and physically as we honor new ways of being, new approaches. Mercury, which is now direct but still post-retrograde shadow, and from what I've seen on the interwebs and what I'm experiencing in my own life, holy moly, I think it's connected to Mercury stationing direct on the North Node, point of fate and destiny, so that 15-degree heart of Aries territory, but opposite the South Node. We're still seeing karmic run-ins, X's, messages coming in. This is a Mercury retrograde that really started months ago when Mercury entered its sign of weakness in Pisces, right before coming into Aries, where it immediately went into pre-shadow, and now it is post-retrograde shadow, so it's traveling direct. Will be post-retrograde shadow until the middle of May. Mercury in Aries struggles with things like speaking before thinking, and then perhaps later regretting it because it came from a place of emotionality instead of logic. So Mercury is conjunct Chiron under the new moon in Taurus, the asteroid of deep soul wounding at the 21st degree of Aries, a degree associated with growth and healing. 21 degrees Aries is the third or final decan of Aries, sub-ruled by Jupiter and ruled primarily by Mars. This all indicates that we're facing a trigger or a wound, perhaps a run-in with a past coworker or an ex, that ultimately allows us to heal a deeper or greater pattern. A pattern that might be related to ways that we self-sabotage, play the victim, or otherwise disempower ourselves by giving that power away to something external, whether it's a person or a circumstance. This is about learning to take risks and to be flexible, to be decisive. As we lean into growth and healing, we're learning to relax concerns centered around being fundamentally enough or having enough. especially as it relates to money and Taurus-ruled things. And lastly, the Taurus New Moon 2024 features a sextile between Mars, 5 degrees Aries, still in a loose operative conjunction to Neptune and Neptune's sleepy, dreamy influence, now 29 degrees, its sign of rulership Pisces. So a sextile between Mars, 5 degrees Aries, and Pluto, but Mars still within conjunction territory of Neptune. By the time the energies of this Taurus new moon subside over the days following the new moon, we will start to really feel that empowered Mars in Aries with a renewed motivation, drive, and willpower, and maybe even some gusto to pursue the seeds of intention we've planted under the Taurus new moon.